And welcome to the presentation about economics at Ashbourne. You're the first presentation this week of quite a few this week, so hopefully you'll get to see a few more. We're just going to kind of go through how economics as an A-level works, what it includes, and kind of the skills that you develop from it. So why that's a good thing, why it's particularly a good thing to do at Ashbourne. And then we're going to have a student who is in here somewhere called Ariane, who's going to kind of answer a few questions. So hopefully you can all see the presentation. I'll just take you through this. So just about me quickly. So my name's Harry Poole. I'm the lead economics teacher at Ashbourne, just going into my 5th year at Ashbourne. I joined a year after finishing university, so it was my first teaching job. And I've taken on a variety of roles, one of which is head of what's called Ashbourne College Finance Programme, which you may have read about before. I'll tell you more about that later on. Another one is that I'm a personal tutor, and I'm also a UCAS tutor. I think you'll learn more about those from the admissions team as well. So we're going to talk about the importance of taking A-level economics, why I think it's a really important subject to be taking, and a really useful subject to be taking. I'm going to give you more detail on the content and how the A-level is assessed. This kind of stuff has changed in the last 3 or 4 years quite significantly. And so there's some specific things that might be of interest for you there. And again, if you've got any questions about that when we get to that, let us know on the chat. How economics at Ashbourne is specifically done, and why we believe, and I believe, that Ashbourne is a really good place to take a subject like economics. We're then going to look at the Ashbourne College Finance Programme, which I started and I run, and has become the most successful club at the college. And then we'll get the kind of opinions of Ariane, our resident student here, who's a year 12 student, so she's going into year 13 next year, but she's also been at Ashbourne now for 3 years, so she's got a kind of a lot of experience in everything Ashbourne. And then any extra questions you've got. So the importance of taking A-level economics. What is economics? Now, lots of you may know this, lots of you may kind of have studied it yourself, or maybe that is what you work in at the moment, or maybe some of the students out there, prospective students out there, have done it for GCSE or at various levels. But generally we say it's how firms, individuals and governments allocate scarce resources to solve the economic problem of scarcity. Now, that may make absolutely no sense to you. It doesn't, that definition itself doesn't make much sense, I don't think. So if we put it simply, who gets what and how much of it? And this is a very kind of broad definition. And this kind of discipline of economics is split into two. It's split into microeconomics, small scale, and macroeconomics, large scale. And we think of microeconomics as producers, firms, consumers, and the third party, so everyone else. And we try to keep it as specific as possible. And that's all your demand and supply and everything like that, which a lot of you will have heard of. And macroeconomics is about firms, households, and society. So this is the stuff that you generally associate with economics, which is tax and inflation and unemployment and trade and tariffs and growth and so on. That's macroeconomics. So we split the course into micro and macroeconomics. We'll talk about that a bit more in a second. So what type of student takes economics? Well, it's people who, I think the most important thing is people who are interested, people who are curious, and people who want to study something new and very current. I mean, it sounds strange, but there's a lot of economics that happens in the world. And actually, right now, there's kind of more economics happening that ever has done. What I mean by this is there's real world issues that are going on at the moment that we will tackle in the economics course, and that a lot of the content and the technical side of things that we learn and that we discuss will go a bit of the way to answering these questions, or at least help students to answer these questions in their own heads, and hopefully have kind of extracurricular discussions about it as well. And as well as this, it's a combination of analytical and mathematical students. Now, this is a particular point here that the students that are the most comfortable are students that are able to do a bit of writing and a bit of maths. Not necessarily an absolutely incredible mathematician, and not necessarily an absolutely incredible essay writer and story writer, but one that can do both and can combine them effectively. Okay, so why take economics as a subject? Well, it's an academic subject. What we mean by this is it's a traditionally respected subject at university. Okay, and it's so alongside history and English and geography and maths, these kind of disciplines, economics is one of these traditional subjects which is studied in an academic sense, so through reading and through academia, rather than through a vocational course, such as a accounting course or something like that. It's a very fast-growing A-level subject. It's the second largest subject at Ashbourne. So we currently have across GCSE Year 12, Year 13, we have roughly 70 to 80 economic students at the moment, with a very large Year 12 going into Year 13 of around 40 to 45 students. So it's been growing in the years that I've been here, and I've been kind of overseeing things. So it's, like I said, it's a combination of analytical and mathematical approach. This appeals to a lot of people. It appeals to the people who don't want to be doing maths, further maths and physics. It appeals to the people that don't necessarily want to be doing history, English and geography. It's a bit of both. It mixes these up. And I think personally there's few subjects that offer this. It helps students develop sophisticated skills, so qualitative and quantitative. That's kind of the same point as I said before. And like I said, many issues to learn about in the world: climate crisis, recession, inequality and poverty. And now we've got what I imagine will become known as something like post-corona economics, or they'll kind of think up some snappy word for it, I'm sure. So content and assessment. So how does the course actually work? Well, like I said, it's split in two. So it's split into microeconomics and macroeconomics. Each year you do what we call a theme, one theme of microeconomics and one theme of macro. And then in the second year you do another theme of micro and another theme of macro. So it's split into 4 themes. And you have theme 1, which is markets and market failure. This is the fundamentals of microeconomics. So this is supply and demand, elasticities, and what we call market failure. So externalities and the way that the government can fix these issues on a micro basis. That may not mean much to you, but this is the kind of fundamentals of microeconomics. Theme 2 is similar, but macroeconomics. So this is the fundamentals of macroeconomics. So this is all of the stuff that I said before: growth, unemployment, fiscal policy, supply side policy. We look at the model of aggregate supply and aggregate demand. We look at inflation and how to calculate inflation and how to measure it. And then also, as I said, the government and how they can, what their role is in fixing issues and encouraging growth and controlling inflation through different kind of mechanisms. Then theme 3, we look at business. We look at business economics. We look at cost and revenue and profit and different market structures, monopolies and oligopolies. And that goes into a lot of detail about the firm specifically. And then theme 4, global macroeconomics. So this is the stuff where you're talking about globalization and economic growth around the world, poverty reduction, inequality reduction, trade patterns, trade wars, tariffs, everything like that. So that's theme 4. So you get, really in this course, you get an overview of economics as a whole. I think there's not many topics that we don't touch in some way. For example, behavioral economics falls somewhere in theme 1. And throughout there is a little bit of behavioral economics, but we discussed that in the first year. So if there's any questions at the moment, make sure you're putting them in that sidebar, but I'll keep going if not. So the assessment of it, so that's the structure of the course, split into 4 themes. And now it gets a little bit confusing. So for some reason, they decided that a good idea to examine 4 themes would be to put it into 3 papers. As you all know, 4 doesn't go into 3. So it's a linear course. So we have all of our exams over to after the second year. Okay, so there is no assessment in terms of the final grade in the first year. It is now a 2-year course. This is what changed in 2015, 2016. It is now a 2-year course. I believe that's what it used to be like a while ago. It's a 2-year course. You have 3 papers with no coursework at the end of year 13, so at the end of the second year. Some subjects have coursework, economics doesn't, which has its pros, has its cons. It depends on the student, I think. You have 1 microeconomics paper, you have 1 macroeconomics paper, and you have 1 synoptic paper. Now this is looking at both of them together, so it will ask questions about micro and macro issues together. And then within one of those papers, there's a short answer section. I'll show you examples of these in a second. There's a data response section, which looks at an extract and some data and some information and asks you to respond to them, almost like a comprehension, but you're using your technical knowledge to answer these questions, and you're evaluating them. So you're not just analyzing, but you're thinking about, is that point valid? What about those assumptions? Are they true? Do they hold? How might these change over time? How big is this change? So that's where you start to get into a lot of detail. And then there's an essay. Now I put essay in inverted commas because it's not a history essay. It's not an English essay. It's not a kind of 2,500 word essay that you need to write in an hour. It's a half an hour, 25-mark essay, which you're looking at about 3 to 4 pages of writing. Now this requires a good level of writing, but it doesn't require you to be poetic or sound particularly nice. What you need to be able to do is effectively portray what you understand of the content well and apply it to examples. I put this kind of NB at the bottom. We do sit the AS exams externally, so with the exam board. So we sit proper AS exams, but they don't count towards the final grade. And that may sound strange. The reason for that is that we think that they have more validity if these exams are sat externally by the school, but they're marked by the exam boards and they get the results back on results day and this kind of proper process. But they do not count towards the final grade. So the content that you will sit in your AS exam, which is the stuff you've done in year 12, that is still examined at the end of your second year, if that makes sense. If there's any questions, let me know.
Yeah, Harry, I just had a question here from Aydin actually asking about the exams. He's asking whether he has a real exam next year. Yeah.
So it's a proper exam. And what it will do is it will, for a couple of reasons, it's really important. It allows you to show what you can do. So it allows you to be able to progress into year 13. We want people to be at a strong level before they go into year 13 because there's quite a big step up there. And we want you to be able to have a good reference when you apply for university. So we want to be able to say, well, this person did this well in their AS exam, they got this mark and they got this grade, and that's why we're recommending them. So they are significant in that way, but like I said, they don't count towards your final grade. So they won't have an impact on your final grade the next year. But yeah, they're important exams which are properly in an exam hall, marked by the exam board, unbiased in all ways. So yeah, at the end of next year. Is that all right?
Yeah, all good.
Cool. Did we finish that? Yeah. So here's a few examples of the papers and the questions that can be asked. So here's an example of a short answer section. So if you just have a look at that. This is actually a microeconomics question. It's talking about revenue. And then below it is talking about a market share and a quite a specific definition question. So these are, this is actually asking you to draw a diagram. And then below it's asking you for basically a definition to understand the concept. So there's your short answers. So this gives you an opportunity to, the exam board, an opportunity to test really what people know. This is the data response. So you get some data there. This is market shares of different firms. You get some extracts, which as you can see is quite technical stuff. There's new information that that students, it's unlikely the students have seen these things before, or at least they may have heard about the topic, but they won't have seen the extracts and the data. So there's quite a little bit of reading, and then these kind of questions get asked. So, for example, what about, are there any problems for Sainsbury's and Morrison's if they merge, if Sainsbury's buys Morrison's? And that would be kind of a 2-page answer there with diagrams and so on. And by answering these questions, you would refer to the extracts. So this is what I mean about the written skill. You need to be able to use these extracts to answer these questions. And this is the essay. So 25-mark essays. These are microeconomic questions. So these are the ones where you're effectively trying to tackle an important economic issue. So how do we reduce carbon emissions? And you'll write about that in a very specific structure. It's not like we expect you to go and write an amazing thesis on these. It's very specific how you do it. I won't go into that yet. And also, should we increase the national minimum wage? That's what it's asking you. Okay, and we like Chris said, we've recorded this so you can have another look through these if you want to. And also you can find them online as well if you want to have a flick through these. So what skills do students need? Well, like you've seen, using technical theory to approach complex issues, apply models to the real world. Independent thinking is really, really important. But at the bottom here, a mixture of quantitative and qualitative, or writing or kind of analytical skills. And that's why economics is quite unique in that way as a subject. So what does it look like at Ashbourne? Hopefully I've given you a lot of information about economics as an A-level, but what about Ashbourne itself? Well, again, this is the first seminar or the first webinar you've been to. So I'll kind of give you a quick outline about Ashbourne and the school day and the class setup. The classes are 2 hours long with a 10-minute break in the middle. They're kind of, I like to say, they're university seminar style lessons. So they are very much student led. It's not me stood at the class lecturing. Obviously I need to teach to a degree, but even then I'm getting the students to think about it and respond and answer questions as we go along. And it's grounded in real life discussion. A subject like economics, I think it's really important that it becomes in real life as quickly as possible. It's not just theoretical. I think it's really important to see that. And economics at Ashbourne, though these long lessons, we'll go into this in more detail, but they allow you to discuss things about real life examples. It allows students to bring in their own knowledge as well. Small class size, so long classes, but with very few students, so less than 10 students. This can range anything from, usually with economics, because it's quite a big subject, it's on average, I'd say about 7 to 8 students in a class, in relatively small classrooms. So you're very close to the teachers and you're able to talk to them quite easily. Again, we'll go into that in a few slides' time. The classes are always open to debate, agreement and disagreement. I put a lot of emphasis on disagreement, and it's very, very important that people can express their opinions, and as long as they're grounded in knowledge and in technical content, then that's fine, and that's a really good thing that we're able to do with these small class sizes. And use a variety of learning techniques. It's not like you're going to be sitting there writing notes over and over again. It's very much a mixture of videos, and I use skeleton notes, which they have to fill out worksheets. It's some exam questions. It's a lot of exam questions. It's a lot of essay writing, but within that, there's group work, there's individual work, there's work as a whole class. So a big mixture of different learning techniques. So if we just go through a couple of those specific things about Ashbourne, small class sizes, I really like, as a teacher, the small class sizes, and I think the students get on with them very well, because it doesn't let any student fall behind. You're not able to go through a lesson with a student not understanding, or 2 or 3 students not understanding what's happening, without noticing it, and or them being able to vocalize this. So the students are able to ask questions and they can easily get the teacher's attention. It encourages collaborative learning because they're sat around each other and there's only a few of them. We often get people giving advice to the person next to them about how to answer a question, or giving opinions across the table. tasks can very often be discussion based because it's a small classroom. You don't have 30 people in a classroom to control. So therefore, if there's 8 people, they can discuss in 2 groups of 4, for example. It's informal and a personable learning experience. So we are on first name basis. So I'm Harry to my students, and the students have no uniform. The teachers don't have a uniform particularly, apart from lanyards, which they have to wear. And so it's quite an informal, personable learning experience. So the kind of relations between the teachers and the students is a good one. The 2-hour lessons, again, allows us to get into a discussion. I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this kind of discussion side of things. It allows students to complete more substantive tasks because there's more time. So they could, for example, plan and write an essay and then go through the essay and discuss it with their class. That's possible in 2 hours, very possible. That's possible in just over an hour. If you had a 40-minute lesson, this wouldn't be possible. You wouldn't really be able to fit the essay writing in there. So it's good that you can keep a lot of the content within one lesson. It allows time for students to do more independent learning. So if I tell them to go away, look through these notes, think about it, and then test them, it works within that time. Less time pressure on content coverage, so I can really go in depth on a topic rather than trying to rush through it. And also the longer lessons allow me to go into more depth or cover concepts at the beginning of lessons that have been learned previously. And it allows synoptic learning, which is micro and macro, in year 13, saying, well, we need to look back at the stuff that we covered at the beginning of year 12. And we have to do that quite regularly throughout the second year, otherwise it will leave their minds. The teacher's role. So I think this is also an important point. I think it's quite a unique way that role that teachers have at Ashbourne, and it's about supporting learning in the classroom, but it's also supporting students outside of the classroom. So providing out of classroom support at many levels of ability. So this isn't just helping students that are struggling, but also offering them extension work, helping them to get up from, let's say, 18 out of 20 in an essay to 20 out of 20 in an essay. So us teachers will have 25%, at least 25% of our time allocated to time to meet students and go over work with them and help them out. And this is very much on an ad hoc basis, so it wouldn't be formalized. It would be kind of, oh, Harry, I didn't really know how to respond to this question you gave us. Can I meet you on Monday at 2 p.m. and we can go through this? And that would be, we'd find a place to sit, we'd go through it, and hopefully that would help them. On top of this, the teachers have a role in terms of providing one-to-one tuition on top of timetabled hours. This would be something that you'd need to talk to the admissions team about, and that would be formally in our timetables as an extra lesson. So you've got the formalized one-to-one tuition, but also there's support from teachers kind of informally. And then all teachers obviously are trained in safeguarding, and they take a big responsibility at Ashbourne for that, protecting the needs, mental health and otherwise, of our students. Are there any questions going forward? Again, there's time for questions at the end, so that's fine. But we'll crack on if there aren't any.
Yeah, no questions in the chat at the moment, Harry, but if anyone does have a question, please do. Oh, we have got one. Okay, so Harry, I've got a question here from Sung. He says, so if we want to have an extra class, there'll be extra fees for it, right? So yeah, that's more of a question, I guess, for our team. Yes, Sung, any extra tuition, one-to-one tuition, will be an additional fee, but you can have a chat with us at greater length about this. I suggest you just send an email to the email address I'm going to put into the chat if you do have any further questions about that.
Cool. Perfect. And those one-to-one sessions, they could be with any of the economics teachers, and they will often be kind of supporting your lessons that you have with your other teachers as well. So just a little bit about Ashbourne College Finance Programme. So it's important for me to say that this isn't part of the course. This is something extra, and it's often for students who want to push themselves further and want to find out more about the subjects themselves. but it's not something where I am doing things specifically to improve people's the students' ability in the subject. Although it probably has that impact as well, which I'll go into. So it is called the finance program because we wanted to have a little bit of a shorter name for it. But what it really is it's Ashbourne College Economics, Business and Finance program. But that doesn't really roll off the tongue particularly well. So it's a program of events throughout the year focused on expanding the minds of those students hoping to apply for economics, business and finance related degrees. I do really focus it at the university aspect. This is something that I started 2 years ago, and it's grown and grown and grown. It's now, I believe, the largest society at the college, with between 20 and 30 students each year. So this, I'll explain in a little bit more detail what it is in a second, but it helps them with A-level economics, but it is super curricular. So it's on top of the curriculum. It's not based on what they've been learning in the curriculum, but hopefully the students will be able to use the content that they've learned or the technical stuff they've learned in lessons to inform their opinion on, let's say, the furlough scheme, for example, that we may discuss. It also adds weight to students' university applications through the personal statement and interview skills. Now, for these kind of degrees, very few universities do actually interview, apart from Oxford and Cambridge. There may be specific examples, but very few actually interview. So the personal statement is really, really important, and a lot of the year 12s are finding it at the moment that they need to find things to put in there. To say, I've read this book, I went to this talk, I went on this trip, I learned this, I had this debate. All of these different things they can add into their personal statement and make their own application more competitive. The grades aren't enough anymore. You need to, everyone who's applying for a competitive course will have very good grades. So you need to set yourself apart in some way. And this is kind of a structured way of helping students with this. So for example, what we have in the finance program is we have an investment challenge. So we have a kind of a virtual trading platform where the students are in teams and they have to pitch investment ideas to me at the beginning, and then throughout the year it runs, and we have regular kind of update meetings, and they are controlling their portfolio. It is virtual money though, unfortunately. We did try to do it with real money, but we were unable to do that, unfortunately. So you've got the investment challenge. There's also talks, readings, debates. I should mention there's weekly meetings. So traditionally it's been every Thursday where we'll meet and we'll do something else each week. For example, I'll show them a recorded talk by a particular academic at the London School of Economics, for example, and then we'll discuss the issues in that. We'll read articles and have debates linked to those. We'll develop reading lists, and people will do book review presentations, which went down really well this year. We had a trip. We went to the city. We did a walking tour of the city, and then went to the London Docklands Museum and learnt about kind of the development of London as an economic powerhouse, and especially trading and financial centre as well. And this is open to both year 12 and year 13 students. It's not open to year 11 students at the moment.
Harry, just to note that there's 10 minutes left.
Cool, thanks, Chris. So the finance program, like I said, it's two sides of it really. It's helping with the economics A-level syllabus, but it's also helping with the university application, as well as just being a bit of extra interest. And when students join Ashbourne at the beginning of the year, they will give me a short paragraph telling me why they want to join. If there are more than the allotted amount of places, 20 students this year, then only certain students will be able to make it on, and that's through an application process. Okay. So I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna hand over, but I'm gonna ask a couple of questions to Ariane. If I just go off this for 1 second. Sorry, guys. So I just wanted to ask Ariane a couple of questions that she can kind of talk to you guys about. I kind of prompt her a little bit. Ariane, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I'll just introduce Ariane. So this is, I said a little bit earlier, so she's been at Ashbourne for a couple of years. She's just finished year 12, obviously with everything going on at the moment, so she didn't sit her actual AS paper, but she's kind of really kind of grown in interest. I'm sure she'll tell you, but she's grown in interest in economics because of how it's been taught here. So just briefly tell us about your experience of economics and why you enjoy it.
So I started studying economics at Ashbourne actually in year 10, which is when I first came to the school, and I had no idea what it was about, to be honest. And I was lucky enough to have Harry as my first teacher of economics, and over the couple of years, I had multiple teachers such as like Stefania and Michael, who are other economics teachers, and I really enjoyed the course, so I decided to take it for A-levels at Ashbourne as well. And what I really like about it is how it's not restricted to one particular side of economics, so it's kind of touching on everything, and it's kind of up to you in how much depth you want to go on each subject, so you have more, it's more flexible, I feel, than some other courses would be. I also I'm a big fan of structured courses. And I really like skeleton notes, and how at the beginning of the lesson it's always explained like, right, this is what you need to know, this is what we're going to do, so that at the end you actually feel like you've done something, which also makes it easier for like tests or exams coming up, that you know exactly what you need to know and what you've been over.
Great. As well as that, what do you think Ashbourne allows you to do in economics which you wouldn't be able to do elsewhere?
Because of the small classes, it makes the lessons way more personal, I feel. And I'm lucky enough to have had a really amazing class this year with loads of international students and people from different backgrounds, which makes it more interesting and more creative, especially discussion-wise. The teacher are always very friendly and available, which I really like. So if you have a question or anything, you can just send an email, and it's quite informal. And this year I've had so many teachers help me just with random stuff from homework, or even with just university applications. Like I'm thinking of studying business, for example, at a certain point, and I was wondering like, what can I do to improve this? Or yeah, so I really.
And just finally, Ariane's also a member of the finance program. Give us one thing that we've done in the finance program this year that you found particularly interesting.
I really enjoyed the debates, but my favorite thing was the trip that we did this year to the city, because it allowed me to meet new people in the finance program that I don't have in any of my classes, for example, which I really enjoyed. So I get to know more people, as well as I got a way better understanding of what it would really be like to work in the city, because we had a tour guide at the beginning of the day who would explain everything to us, and it really helped me make a better choice for my university application, as well as increase my interest in economics. And then in the afternoon we went to the Museum of Docklands, and I found this very interesting, and I heard from other, like my friends really enjoyed it as well, to hear a more historical side of it, which is something that you wouldn't really get in courses, I feel, as much.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. And Ariane is applying for an economics related subject as well. I'm not sure yet which one she's applying for. Hopefully she knows. So that is everything that we've got time for. I think we've got another 5 minutes for questions, but just quickly to reiterate, and Chris will say this again, contact the admissions team through these details here. And again, you've been in contact with them before, but if you've got any more queries after this, or if you want to have further discussions with me, then go through the admissions team.
Great, fantastic. Thanks so much, Harry. That was great. I do actually have a question here from Aydin. He's asking, is the finance program group work? And if so, does that mean he'll be working with year 13s as well?
Yes, it's a really good point, and I think it's a real bonus of the finance program that you kind of build relationships between year 12 and year 13. So it's not all group work. There is some individual work as well, but a lot of it is group work, and there's been some really good kind of constructive relationships built between year 12 and year 13 students over the last 2 years, where you're able to kind of use the knowledge that you've built in year 13 to help the year 12 students really understand what's going on. And just into, like Ariane said, in terms of friendships, it's really good to be mixing across the years as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Harry. Yeah, Aiden says thank you. As Harry said, if anyone does have any follow-up questions or they'd like to maybe book a follow-up meeting with Harry to talk about economics, please just email us on the Ashbourne email address, which is admissions@ashbournecollege.co.uk.
And thanks very much, Ariane, for your help.
Yes, thank you, Ariane. Really good job.
No problem.